Hello everybody, my name's James, and for the benefit of those listening to the audio, listen to Ask James, my regular YouTube live stream where I welcome questions from the YouTube community on anything football related. To timestamp this, it is 2:04 p.m. and I'll be answering questions today up until 2:55. So as per usual, I'll answer questions in order of submission. I may well skip something that is repeat or similar to something previously asked. No proper announcements from me. I'm intending to roll a transfer this week, so I'll get straight into the questions. Ethan Justin says, "Hi James, United fan here. Interested in your opinion. Do you see any world where Ten Hag can work? Has brought some joy and want to back him, but consistently feeling let down and seeing no direction." Okay, how do I answer this nicely? No. No, I don't. We even had a discussion on something the other day about looking at if Ten Hag took over other Premier League clubs, which ones would he improve? And we've really struggled. Unfortunately for United, it's one step forward as per the opening sort of 20-25 minutes last night, to then two step backs of what follows afterwards. And it's just gone on too long now. One of the points I wanted to make on Monday as well, which I didn't, was I think certainly I reflected in the summer after the cup win against City and Lisandro Martinez and Rafael Varane both really importantly playing in that, and the problems United had at centre-back last year, and giving a little bit of mitigating for that. And Ten Hag himself kept saying, when my team's fit, the results will improve. Okay. I know Rasmus Højlund has not featured really this season, and Luke Shaw also. But otherwise, we're kind of fully fit now. Lenny Yoro, I don't think you can include at this moment because he's so young, and maybe Delip might have had favouritism anyway. So everyone's got some injury issues. There's not really an excuse there anymore, in my opinion. And no, I don't. I think this has an inevitable conclusion. I think it was an inevitable conclusion from the summer, really, because I think had he not beaten City in that final, I think he would have been dismissed. I think it then caused some hesitancy that they didn't want to sack him after winning the derby in an FA Cup final, which was a great achievement, and United deserved it on the day. And I think, if Ten Hag stays, then I think United will have more of those results where, they'll beat City or, they'll beat an Arsenal. It will happen. But in terms of consistency of what Manchester United really want to be, and it's not, can we push for top four? Like, I can just never see it going beyond that. So, no, not in terms of what Manchester United want to be anyway. Aaron Hill says, "Hi James, captaincy currently sitting on Salah as I don't own Harland or Saka. I do, however, own Havertz and I'm very tempted to move it over to him. Talk me out of it. Cheers." I won't. No, I think Harland top for me this week. I think then Saka just over Palmer. And then, as discussed on our Patreon pod this morning, I actually think Palace-Liverpool might be quite low scoring. So then I think there's the cluster of the Arsenal attackers, arguably even ahead of Salah this week, and even arguably include Trossard and Martinelli in that, possibly. So I'm not going to talk you out of it, mate. Uros Milicevic says, "Hello, James. I need a City attacker for draft. Harland, KDB and Foden are already taken. Who do I choose, or should I look elsewhere?" Look elsewhere. Cover this all the time. Don't get City players just for the sake of getting City players. A Savinho or a Silva or a Doku will have one game, in a blue moon where they go off mad and the community wants to go and buy them, and then they don't do anything for 3-4 weeks. Meanwhile, something at equivalent price, like a Johnson, I realise is probably taken in draft, will tick over really nicely for you. So no, I'd just look at other teams personally rather than get involved in that. Hasselbank's win. James, what is your favourite celebration from a player in the Premier League? And please do it on stream. I can't do that. Do not disappoint your fans. Thanks in advance. If I had the t-shirt on underneath, I'd do it. We had this discussion a little while ago, and I said I think Balotelli's celebration at Old Trafford is, I think that's the most iconic Premier League goal celebration of all time. The being it him, the being in the derby, a game that City would go on to win 6-1 and ultimately go on to win the title on goal difference as well, meant that it was very relevant and it mattered. It's just so perfect. From him, the character he was, the abuse he used to get from the media and us, So yeah, Mario Balotelli, I think that's the best celebration either. There is no way I could do the Jurgen Klinsmann dive right here, right now. So, sorry, I am going to let you down. Eddie says, are you going to the Amex on Sunday? Yes, I am, Eddie, yes. It says, I'll be there. We'll come and say hi if I see you. Come, you Spurs. Please do, mate. There's every chance I may, it's not confirmed how I'm travelling yet, but I may be there quite early in the bar, which is actually part of Brighton Stadium. So feel free to come and say, if you see me, I always say this to people, if you see me in the stadium, never hesitate to say hello. Please do come and say hello. Eddie says, hugely impressed with Mikey Moore yesterday. He looks ready to be getting more minutes and held up well. Really hoping Werner doesn't start again in Son's absence. Would prefer either MM plays, Mikey Moore, or Biss comes in, move Bentancur to 8 and Matters off the left. No, Matters off the left is not an option. It says, do you... it was just a load of statements other than, am I going to Brighton at the weekend? Just add, look, Werner is going to play on Sunday. Fairly certain of that. So accept it. As per Monday's podcast, we know he's not good enough, but he does give the team a good balance. So... and actually we saw some of the benefits of that in terms of Udogie, Maddison in those inside passages in between sort of Werner and Solanke. That Werner has a place that can work for the benefit of the team. We know he's not good enough. We know he's not the long-term solution. But yeah, everyone calm down. Eddie says, do you think Cunha is worth the extra money over Delap, Strand, Larson, Dominic Calvert-Lewin? Question. Looking at bringing in one of them to afford Savinho to Foden. I don't think Sav starts. Is he in your predicted lineup? He probably won't be. I've not truly considered yet my predicted lineup for City. That's the honest answer. I would think Foden plays, but I wouldn't take that as a given certainty either. By the way, I'm sure everyone knows, oh, KDB's still absent. Foden will start. He played well in midweek. Yeah, it's not a given certainty, I don't think. He probably does. I wouldn't go Cunha or Larson at the moment because I think that it's a challenging game this week. Then it's City, then it's Brighton away. I think wait a little bit on that. We're getting towards the point of really considering Wolves, but I would still rather that you invested elsewhere, I think, at the moment. There is concerning news about both Branthwaite and Mikalenko potentially missing out for Everton this week, which as a consequence would put me off Calvert-Lewin a little bit. So arguably, if I had to invest in there now, it would maybe be Delap. I'm not hugely in love with that either, considering it's an away game this weekend and I expect West Ham to win tomorrow. So if you're not convinced by any of them choices and you want to look further ahead, I don't mind. Cunha's as likely as any of them to score this weekend, I guess. But the honest answer, I'm not overly keen on any of them, and I don't think we can be certain Foden starts, but I get why you'd want to move Savinho on at the same time. Jacob NH says, hi James, do you prefer Solanke and Mavadivi or DCL and Johnson? It's going to be the Solanke option. You'll do well to find an option that's not just going to advise Dominic Solanke for me at the moment. It's fully fit, he's firing. I know Brendan Johnson's scoring goals as well. But Dominic Solanke is going to give you brilliant consistency for the foreseeable and beyond, I think. Johnson will be one of them. You have 2-3 games. If he doesn't return, you get a bit itchy finger about it. Solanke will just tick over great, I think. So, yeah, the Solanke option. I know a few people are quite high on Mavadivi. His underline's not too bad. There's obviously that the next 4 fixtures for Leicester are great. Not hugely keen on that myself personally, but I prefer him as the option to go along with Solanke. Bad Company says, hi James, great picture on the thumbnail by the way. It's all Nico's work stitching me up, but you know, I've got to take it, and I don't mind laughing at myself. He says, I think Arsenal versus Southampton could be 5 or 6 this weekend. Who do you think is Arsenal's most likely player to score a hat-trick? Good question. In terms of an actual hat-trick, if you said now an Arsenal player scores a hat-trick tomorrow, I'd say the most probable is probably Havertz. But I wouldn't say that makes him more probable to haul. You know, Saka could be goal and 2 assists or something like that, right? But on that base, if that's why you're asking the question, to answer what you've asked, I think Havertz probably. JP says, hi mate, hold or sell Diaz, might go Brennan Johnson or Trossard. So Trossard, we're not too sure where we stand because Arteta spoke about Odegaard again over the last hour or so, and he spoke about him, but he didn't actually give an update of when he's back. And I think we might be getting to a stage where we're looking at him going, this is quite long term. That said, I'd also have an awareness of Arsenal attackers like Trossard, that if it doesn't go well for you this week, think of the outcome. You may look at the fixtures afterwards and go, oh, I didn't want to do that. I just have an awareness of that. So, if the rest of your squad is kind of really well set up, I'm more in favour of taking a punt on something like that. And I imagine he probably does have a good day tomorrow. Brennan's obviously flying from a confidence perspective. I'll be honest, were I investing in Johnson or Trossard personally, I'd invest in Johnson, but then I've also got 3 Arsenal sitting there, so I can't add even if I want to. I would maybe feel more of a priority to have 3 Arsenal than 3 Tottenham at the moment, but Johnson has been on my mind because I think there's a good sustained run of fixtures for Tottenham obviously coming up. The opponent on Sunday should suit. There should be some space for him at time in the game. In terms of Diaz, one interesting aspect is obviously he went to 8.1 last night. And for those who've owned since the start at 7.5, that at 8.1 feels like it might be the tipping out of the maximum of it. Take your 7.8, bank that money and move on. I don't think is the worst idea. That said, I do think he'll start tomorrow, and I'm not sure that the other 2 are definitively better than him tomorrow. So I think if in any doubt, the answer is probably to stick for now. Plus, I think for many people, obviously a lot of you will have wildcarded last week. That's not the case in all cases, but it does feel like most people are set up quite well this week. If you've got the 1 free transfer, yeah, this is a good week to roll, I think, kids. Sundini15 says, I'm really struggling on captaincy this week. I'm in the same boat as you without Harland and Salah. Right now I'm deciding between Saka, Palmer, Bumo, Gabriel and Watkins. For captaincy, I'll be going Saka. And the decision on that is, for me, it's Saka versus Palmer. But the decision on that is as much Southampton versus Nottingham Forest is where the conclusion is. I said that on Monday's podcast, that's likely to be where it would be at for me, is watching Southampton Monday night and then making a definitive decision from there. And I watched the first half and, yeah, wasn't too much doubt in my mind in terms of what I'm going to do from captaincy. So that's the way I intend to go, personally. But I think it's close. Michael Radley says, hi James, hope all is good, lad. If we get news that Diaz is benched and Foden starts, well, of course it is the 12:30 kickoff. Would you consider Jackson out for Calvert-Lewin to fund Diaz to Foden from -4? Would you just bench Diaz and play Wood? I wouldn't want to bin Nicholas, despite what I just said about Forest. I'm not sure I'd want to bin Nicholas Jackson this week. Again, it feels like a more powerful one to roll in. You'll look at Jackson away to Liverpool next week and think, okay, yeah, now's the time to adjust things for me. So I don't think Foden's a certain starter. I know what you're saying if you get the information, but I don't know. I look at it this week and think, yep, cool. Okay, you get the info, you want him in, get that. But KDB's back in game week 8, and what does that mean? What does that mean with Gundogan's position in the team at the moment? What does that mean with Rico Lewis positioning at the moment? What does that mean for Phil Foden? So for the moment, it's a stay away from me as it stands at this moment. If he was to do amazing this week and you think, oh, well, he got to play the next game and he does well over the international break, then I may myself be going to Foden in game week 8. But no, I don't think the info's quite there yet, really. Listen, you take risks in this game and someone like Phil Foden could pay off great for you. I'm just not sure we got the information we want quite yet. 1877 WWFC says, hi James, if we find out Diaz is benched tomorrow, there's lots of finding out stuff. Diaz and Trent to Palmer and VDV for free, or just sell Diaz to Johnson and roll the other transfer, rest the team fairly template after wildcard 6. Look, you're almost asking the wrong person, purely because I have a bias at the moment to liking the structure that has 2 players in and around Saka and Palmer's price, which means I can just go to Phil Foden if I want to in game week 8, for example. So you are going to get bias in my answer by asking that. So I'm going to say Palmer. I'm presuming that's not taking you to free in that price bracket. If you haven't got any players at that price bracket, then I'd very much recommend trying to get Palmer in any case. Jacob NH says, who do you have as the best mid 5.5 or below? Annoyingly, I'm 0.1 off of McNeil. 5.5 or below. A few people mentioned Mavadidi is a shout. I'm pretty sure he's under that at the moment, isn't he? McNeil is over that, I think, now, isn't he? Of the Brentford three, my preference is Keane, Lewis, Potter, but my preference is probably just to leave that alone. It's still Morgan Rogers. If you don't have, yes, fixture list might be getting a little bit more difficult, but if you don't have, that's still the one. Personally, beyond that, I would just go Tyler Dibbling and use the money going forward for different things. JP says, what would you do with Fulham assets like Robinson, who's my third defender? I have two other red flag defenders and Smith Rowe 0.6 in the bank. Well, you've probably built up some value in Robinson, so that protects you. I think the fixtures, once you get the City game out of the way, look pretty good again for sort of 5 weeks or so. So that's perfectly fine. I understand you don't want to play it this week, so it sounds like fix one of the other defenders, mate. Sounds like Sepp Vandenberg might be good cover for you this week. Steve says, hi James, who do you think will be the first few managerial casualties this season and when will the heads roll? I think Ten Hag might be next week, personally. Look, I don't really feel too comfortable talking about this because I don't have any personal dislike to him as a human or anything. Loved his Ajax team, right? I don't actually particularly want him to do badly or anything, but it has got to the stage where, as I said, I think the rest of us are all looking at it going, oh, I hope he stays. And I think that says a lot. So I think he'll go. I think Russell Martin is now in danger at Southampton, partly as well by whatever the reaction is tomorrow following his comments on Monday, where, for all we know, there might be a few players within the camp gone, what is that all about? So I'd be a bit concerned about him. Other than that, I don't think there'd be too many. I think there was concerns about Eddie Howe heading into the season. I think that's okay at the moment, but Newcastle does need constant monitoring because I think when the time's right, I think those upstairs at Newcastle wouldn't be against the idea of changing, but it almost needed to be really bad for Newcastle, I think, to get to that stage. As said on Monday, I really hope we'll stick with Gary O'Neill at the moment. I'm not concerned about Oliver Glasner and Crystal Palace. It's way too soon, I think, to be judging Julian Lopetegui. What's happening at Everton behind the scenes is going to put a little bit of pressure on Sean Dyche. But I think right now Ten Hag and Martin are the two probably to really keep an eye on. Lord Offica says, hi James, how are you? I am well, thank you, mate, and hope you are too. It says Saka or Harland for captain. Harland for me, by the way. I kind of virtually traded blows with Suj on our Patreon pod this morning about, like, if you've got Harland, it's just not even a debate for me, to be honest. This is best 4.5 defender to get from now for like 5 to 6 weeks. Sepp Vandenberg, mate. Just bank it, mate. Just bank it. Fixtures are good. Pretty much up to game week 14. So I think that covers you sort of 7 weeks or so. Yes, again, you wouldn't want to play him in game week 8 at Manchester United, or maybe you do. So Sepp Vandenberg, don't spend it for the sake of it. That's the one. I said prior to last week I didn't think we'd have the information in terms of his minutes. I think we do now. I think he's going to keep playing. So that's where I'd be going. He'd be a shoo-in for me if I was on wildcard now, for example. I know they gambled it last week as well. And those who have, I think, would be pretty happy with the situation they're in. So, yeah, generally speaking, I think that's the one. Obviously, if you can get up to Lewis, there's obviously a little bit of a preference there. But there isn't much I like between, to be honest, the 4.0s and Pedro Porro. There's not a huge amount there that I really like. Mickey van der Ven is a name that you could consider, but I'd prefer to pay the extra for Pedro Porro. Personal bias again. Caddy says, afternoon mate, what are your thoughts on people dropping Trent to 4.5 and Diaz up to Palmer? Seems a bit knee jerky to me. I think it's somewhere in the middle. I think it's okay for people to look at Cole Palmer and go, oh my god, look at what he's doing. Look at what he's been doing since game week 7 last year. We've now got a whole season of Cole Palmer returns. How many points has he got in those 38 game weeks, starting with his debut in game week 7 last year? What did he get last year? 240 or so? Was he on 250 or so now? So across the last 38 game weeks, he's I might have this slightly wrong, but he's close to 300, isn't he? I think. So I get it. It's that ability, I think I completely understand why a few people would have thought, oh, he might have a dip this year. I understand that. The jump from the price he was last year to obviously up to now felt like a really big psychological jump. Plus, we obviously all had Nkunku to look at in pre-season. I completely understand anyone who went down that route. But I think I can understand with what's happened now that you go, crap. Because he's put up a couple of real hauls, right? And if you can nail them as captaincies, and to be honest, why shouldn't you captain a Palmer away to Wolves or at home to Brighton? That's the reflection of what's changed now. So I get people wanting to get there. The binning of Trent, I'm not a fan of, but I can also understand you'd look ahead and go, well, them fixtures for Liverpool are quite tough coming up. I got Liverpool 17th on my ticker across the next 5 game weeks. And 2 after that, there's City at home and Newcastle away. So I think across the next 8, I'd probably have Liverpool bottom of my ticker. So I do understand that. But I also think, yeah, it's not Trent's fault. But when this happens, people want to find, how am I going to get there? And Trent for many will be the easiest way of doing it, right? Ollie Watkins be another way. So I understand it. But if it feels knee-jerky to you, then I think you're answering your own question in terms of how you feel, mate. Alex Bishop says, hi James, who would you choose to replace Eze, Martinelli, Trossard, Johnson or Kulusevski? Or would you hold? Cheers. Just say on Eze, it's another one. Again, I get it. You don't want to look at Liverpool tomorrow, but then Forest away, Tottenham at home, Wolves away, Fulham at home. It's all right, isn't it? I don't think it's in desperation stakes. He's had, 3rd most shots in the league. I realise a lot of them are from distance. I would possibly be thinking Johnson. The reason I'd be thinking Johnson is not that I think it's better than Arsenal assets this weekend, like I don't. But I think to put in and then leave in for a sustained period, yeah, that's probably more the way I'd be thinking. So Johnson from your list, but I think Martinelli or Trossard, one of them two will do best over this weekend. JP says, would you recommend TAA to Vardiol this week or next? Neither. So, I know the position Vardiol got in for the goal against Newcastle, and it wasn't the only time he ended up in that position during the game. But if people watched the highlights and believed that was, Josko Vardiol flying down the left wing the same as last season, I think you're a bit mistaken. Newcastle in games like this are well happy to cede possession and territory. They funneled very much into a back 5 with Joel Linton moving into that. So they were allowed to be overly aggressive on that side. Because Jacob Murphy was also playing a role to obviously help out Kieran Trippier up against primarily Jack Grealish, and Vardiol was able to kind of push forwards from left-sided centre-back and go and be really aggressive. Now, it's interesting. So everybody thinks Rico Lewis is going to play this advanced role. Well, not everybody, but a lot of people. Now, once City got all their men back fit, that may be from right back. So what does that mean for Vardiol at left back? So I don't think Vardiol's a better asset than Trent. I think he's more likely to get rotated than Trent. I think the fixtures coming up are good enough that may well be the case. I don't personally think at this moment that Vardiol is worth the extra money over Lewis. I certainly recognise the risk with Lewis. I've spoken about it pretty much every week all season. But bottom line, I just wouldn't be moving Trent to Vardiol. I certainly wouldn't be doing it this week. It's no consideration for me. None whatsoever. So next week, okay, maybe we'll look at it again, but right now, no. Tom Reynolds says, hi James, fairly set on wildcard 8 to get Erling Harland back in. Want to keep Saka, Palmer, Trent, but also want to get Foden and Solanke. Which 3 would be your priorities of those 5? Definitely Palmer is just a hold through now. Again, I would want 2 players at that 10 bracket, so it's a Saka or Foden. I think if you're wildcarding in 8, I would probably take the chance and attack Foden. But it doesn't feel like the priority. Then the other one is Solanke versus Trent, isn't it? I think Dom, but that's close. It's close. Woodstock Chris says, good afternoon, James. Hope you're well. Would you do a -4? Salah and João Pedro out to Saka and Solanke. This allows me to bench Smith Rowe. Also, extra -4 Eze to Brennan Johnson. Thanks for everything you do. You're very welcome, mate. I certainly wouldn't be taking a -4 to go Eze to Brennan Johnson. 3, you want to consider it fine for a hit? No. I think João Pedro needs moving on. If that means that you need to restructure your squad because Solanke is the person that you really want as the replacement rather than something that João Pedro's valued, then fine. fine. Ollie Rose says, good afternoon, James. Please, can you give me a 1 week midfield punt for max 7.7 million? Boomo, Trossard, Brennan and Bowen are considerations. Would love your thoughts. Cheers, mate. We're looking at 1 week punts, mate. We are talking about Arsenal here. So, Leandro Trossard, mate. Michael Radley says, also, as a Spurs supporter, would you prefer a season of Spurs winning a League Cup, FA Cup and Europa League Cup treble over winning the Premier League or the Champions League? Wow, I don't think anyone's ever asked me that. It's normally the always, would you rather England won the World Cup or and Spurs won the Charity Shield, mate? It's got to be the Premier League or the Champions League, isn't it? I think. I know what you're saying. That would be phenomenal to have the 3 cup wins. I get that, but I think for us, yeah, just one. That's all I ever want, really. It's just one in my lifetime of a Premier League or a Champions League would be the ultimate. So. Yeah, it's a good question. I don't think it's straightforward. But for me, and it won't be the answer for many others, it would be one of the big ones. Yeah, I think so. Eddie R says, hey, James, hope you're well. If we get news that Diaz is... Lots of if we get news. We may get news. You're quite right. We might not. If Diaz is benched, would you move to Johnson? Have to start Jimenez if not. I already have Solanke from another Eddie going to the Amex Sunday. Come you Spurs. We're Tottenham everywhere, mate. We're all out. We're doing well, so we're all out the woodwork again, aren't we? Yeah, look, if he's benched, yeah, I'd make the move. Yeah. James Wright says, hi, James. Best João Pedro replacement. Look, similar price. I don't know what you got in the bank, but I went with Vardy a couple of weeks ago, and I'm going to stick to that answer with the next 4 fixtures are there. It also kind of sets up quite nicely to hopefully a João Pedro return. Kind of misses out by 1 week of being ideal, but also potentially into Strand Larsen at the same stage when Wolves come into good fixtures. Vardy's next 4 is great. Strand Larsen's got Southampton at home in 11, right, as an example. So, yeah, I'd come to the conclusion there was enough looking forward in future weeks that I did want a forward at around about that value. That said, I am potentially looking at manipulations that might allow me to move back up to sort of Alexander Isak to go with Watkins and Solanke around about game week 12. I could be leaving this money in the bank for quite a while that I've got 1.6 just to keep leaving the options open. But from around about that price bracket, James... my preference actually is with Jamie Vardy. Statistically, that won't be the answer, but you've asked me, so I've answered it. Hello to FPL Rubber Ducky, says afternoon all. Hope you're well, pal. Says Callum says, would Brennan Johnson be your preferred Spurs midfielder? Like many might move Diaz to one of them if we get Windy's not starting. Yep. Spoke about this on Monday's podcast. Spoke about it yesterday on Clash of Correspondence. Keep getting asked every hour on Twitter. I think I've been pretty clear that yes, at this moment, yes, Brennan. James Wright says, best as a replacement to start every week. Yeah, you know the answer already, right? Genuinely, it's the same answer. You're saying every week rather than the short term. Yes, the same answer. Yeah, it's Brennan. Rob Passy says, hi James, 1.5 million in the bank. Pedro and Porro out for Havertz and Vandenberg. Or Pedro and Robinson out for Solanke and Vandenberg. I think I prefer the Dom option, actually. So, either way, he was going Vandenberg. So, you're asking me Havertz versus Solanke. Right, again, for this weekend, Havertz. Moving forward for the future weeks coming up, I think Tottenham have got a really good run of fixtures coming up. And the answer for me would be Dom. JP says, top 3 teams / players to target for the next set of fixtures. I'd keep an eye on Jared Bowen, but it's probably not an investment for next week with Tottenham away. But West Ham are getting closer to a good turn of fixtures, as are Wolves' assets. Forest players, potentially after this weekend. Chelsea is a kind of a good run of fixtures there. 3 out the following 4 at home. So he likes of Wood, Gibbs, White. I'd keep on radar. But we are, as I've been saying, even in pre-season, we are about to come to this period where a lot of the best teams coming into difficult run of fixtures and playing each other. Liverpool play Chelsea in 8, Arsenal in 9. You've got Villa playing Tottenham in 10. They themselves play Liverpool in 11. Newcastle play Chelsea in 9. Arsenal in 10. There's a lot of this. United and Chelsea play each other in 10. There's a lot of this coming up. So the teams with the best fixtures are some of the ones near the bottom of the table. Brentford's is ongoing as covered. I'm presuming no one's asked me about Brian Boomo because I've already got him. Owen Murphy says, hi James, staying in Tottenham area next weekend for the Chicago Bears game. Any restaurant or bar recommendations, especially somewhere for an early pint on Sunday? To be honest, if you've never been before, my honest advice is go into the stadium and have a proper walk around the stadium, because you can walk around, for an American football as well, it will be all completely open. You'll be able to walk around all of the lower tier, the marketplace behind the home end. You'll be able to walk all around the upper tier. Go in the ground early, get yourself a pint and walk around the stadium and take in what it is, some of the history of Tottenham within the stadium. And it's unlike any other stadium. That's generally what I'd recommend. The bars around Tottenham aren't the best. They'll be pretty packed as well, I should imagine. So generally the recommendation is go in the ground. And as you're going in the ground early, I recommend for something to eat. There's this fried chicken shop that you might have heard me mention before called Chicken. You want to be there sort of at least 2.5 hours before your game starts to hold off the queues. But yeah, 3 hours before kick-off, Chicken, have that. Go in the ground 2 hours before, get your drink, have a proper walk around the stadium. Walk up the south stand, all 82 rows. That'll be good for your legs. There's plenty for you there, mate. FPL Kratos says, hi James, hope you're well. This probably won't feature on your bench dilemmas tomorrow, so I thought I'd ask which one of Brennan and Rodgers would you start? I own Solanke but not Watkins, if that helps. It would make no difference. And yes, it will feature on my benching dilemmas tomorrow, and the answer will be to play Brennan Johnson. Ethan Justin says, who is one signing in the last 2 years from each of the big six you wish Spurs had got? Must be realistic. Okay. Okay, must be realistic. Okay, for us, we'll say David Raya, because we know that there was interest as well. City, shit. Who do you even name that's gone to City that maybe we could have realistically got hold of? Savinho, maybe? Yeah, maybe. Chelsea. My God, they bought a whole bloody team, haven't they? Palmer. I suppose that if we'd gone for Cole Palmer last summer, I suppose, I mean, he went to Chelsea, would have been that unrealistic that he went to Tottenham. So I think I can say Cole Palmer. I can't now, but I think I could have at the point that he moved. Who are we missing? Liverpool. Diaz isn't the last couple of years, is he? But Tottenham were really interested in Luis Diaz, and he obviously chose to go to Liverpool, understandably. That's a bit longer ago, though, isn't it? More realistic one, Szoboszlai, maybe. I like Dominic Szoboszlai. Who have I missed here? Manchester United. Crap. God. Lenny Yoro. Future proofing. Good question. Ashish Karki says, thank you James, everybody like and subscribe. Yes, thank you mate, much appreciated. FPL Andy says, afternoon James, what do you think of Trent, Hall, Jota to Porro, Lewis, Foden 4-3? It's interesting, there's definitely a camp at the moment of managers. I think it's almost summed up by a chat with Ricky Saunders on COTC yesterday. There's a camp of managers not quite happy with Pedro Porro and looking to move him on, and there's definitely another camp that are looking at buying him next week, I think, in game week 8, to potentially help fund other things. You know, Trent to Porro as an example in game week 8. Liverpool coming into a tougher run, Tottenham coming into a better fixture run. Can see that being a move that might be popular in game week 8. I get the appeal of Lewis Foden. I feel like I kind of covered that to death in terms of the players you're selling. Not keen to sell Trent as it stands. Lewis Hall, I thought, played really well, by the way, against Manchester City last weekend. But I understand that the desire to move that on. Jota, every week I feel like he's going to play. I feel like that's just not my biggest problem. But I also understand that it's probably becoming one. So I don't mind it overall, but I wouldn't want to bin Trent. Rudy Visma says, hi James, Salah and Minter out for Foden and Bumo, worth it? If rolling, I'd play either Minter or Greaves, then make the moves post-international break. Took out Smith Rowe for Minter in game week 4, LMAO, so just the 14 points lost. No point being hindsight in looking back, mate. We'll all have transfers like that across the season, I should imagine. Salah, Minter to Foden and Bumo. Using a powerful captaincy option now. I'm gonna assume from the way this question is asked that you already have Erling Harland, therefore it doesn't hurt you so bad. So yeah, sure, fine. OG Nods says, hi James, is it surprising that we've yet to see any player drop below 4.0? Is there a possibility that 4.0 has been set as a minimum by FPL Towers? There's no chance, mate. It'll go. The thing is, here's an example, right? I wildcarded Nedeljkovic in game week 3, okay? Now, since then, he ain't played at all, okay? He's been in no danger at any point, and admittedly, when I put him in, he was getting close towards a rise where it looked like he played in game week 2, looked like he'd probably played game week 3. He didn't. But those like me who've been with a player like that, who's got the time to move it? So it's only moving as well also to something else that's worthwhile. So let's give you an example. Let's say that I had Nedeljkovic in the year that John Lundstrom went mad, right? Would be having to sell it because you'd be like, oh my God, there's that 4.0 train. What are you rushing to? Wout Fass, Taylor Harwood-Bellis, Sepp Vandenberg. What are we rushing to? Now, Vandenberg starts getting returns, and because of Brentford's fixtures, that might change the narrative a little bit. But there's nothing to go from 4.0 to something else. Plus, at the same time, you've had a lot of people wildcard really early this season, so that fixes those problems, and we think those transfers don't count in the same way towards price changes. So a lot of people went with something like that, have moved that on to now like a Sepp Vandenberg, who's in the luxury position to go, I got no fires this week, I'll move my 4.0. Now, some people possibly are, but I think they're all taking the decision process at the moment to go, well, hang on, I can build my free transfers here and I can mini wildcard in a little bit. I'll just leave that problem. So no, someone will go to 3.9 at some point, definitively and definitely. There's been no 4.0 goalkeepers playing, no standout 4.0 defenders. That's the reason why at the moment, primarily, and a lot of the early wildcards, while we haven't seen any changes there, I think. Hunter Serene says, love your insight, James. You're the man. Thanks, Hunter. You have a great weekend. Greg Frost says, Calafiori 2 punty over Saliba. Best 4 million defender for wildcard, thinking O'Shea. Vandenberg, have been clear on that. I probably wouldn't pick O'Shea over Greaves, and I don't think the Ipswich fans would say that either. I think probably both continue to play together, but I think they would still have a preference with Jacob Greaves, because you don't lose points in fantasy for left-footed clearances within your own penalty area. Calafiori 2 punty over Saliba might be. I would have real confidence he plays this weekend with the doubts over Timber, White, etc. Clayton's quite high on him, and I'm aware of that. I would say, in all honesty, if Clayton wasn't, I wouldn't be either. But I am aware that Clayton's quite high on him. We watched back the Leicester game in midweek. He really does carry the ball forward, and that gives him I think an outside kind of open play possibility of an assist from open play positions as well. But is it worth the 0.2 saving now? Personally, for me, it's a no, because I still think Saliba's more likely to score from a set play than Calafiori on what I've seen so far. But I don't mind it if you've got a particular preference for it. Yeah, Clayton's quite high on Calafiori. So ask Clates. Ashish said, should I do Salah and Pedro to Harland and Dibbling? We'll have 3 mids under 6 million that way. Let me know your thoughts. I'm concerned about setups that have that. So kind of, let's just say, for example, Dibbling, Rogers, McNeil, something like that. And then Bumo. And then like a Saka or a Palmer. I'm concerned about that. And I use the example to say, at the moment I'm taking Harland on. And let me be very clear to everybody, right? I could well, after this international break, could well buy Erling Harland. Or if Unai Emery tells me today Ollie Watkins is injured, I may well even buy him today. Although probably just buy John Duran, to tell you the truth. I may end up with Harland in a couple of weeks, right? But my take on the going without Harland is that for me, every player in the game is within touching distance, bar him. He's the one player I'm taking on. With me, at the two players at 10 million, even if I want to get to Salah, I'm not too far away. So all them midfielders are there for me. If you just go with a setup that say just Cole Palmer, and because the way the investment's going to come from him now and his consistency and his sustainability, you're not going to want to move him. Right? It's not to say you can't. Some will, particularly with the fixture swing coming up. But if you do sell Cole Palmer, you're probably going to want to go back in game week 12. Not now, obviously. We're talking about next week. So 8 to 12, 8 to 11, you might feel like you want to take him on. By the way, I might be captaining him in game week 9. But if you do, fine. But you're probably going to want to go back in game week 12. So I know I'd been looking at it maybe Palmer to Son 4 weeks and then go back again. Now, right now, that feels unlikely. But point being, if you just go with Palmer, and that would feel like the right one at the moment to go in as your one player, and you're never going to want to move him, you are cutting yourself off of Saka, Foden, De Bruyne, Heung-min Son, Bruno Fernandes, Martin Odegaard, all these players. You're cutting yourself off of all of them, and also Salah, obviously. And I don't like that, because our opinions change, the template changes, the narrative changes, fixtures change. So from a structure perspective, sure, I'm taking on Harland. At the moment, it's going okay. I realise any week I could die, but it's just one player. I don't like about that setup that I just feel like it's too many players that are too far away. And you might look at them all now and go, I don't want none of them players. That's fine. But I bet there will be a point where you do. And I just factor that in before you make that sort of move. At the same time, I'm not going to sit here and tell anyone not to get Harland. For me, he's the best captaincy across probably the next 5 game weeks. I'd understand anyone wanting to go there and get it done and captain him. CM Punk 2310 says, hi James, Diaz to Foden for free if Diaz doesn't start. Lots of if Diaz doesn't start makes it tough to get Palmer later on though. Well, I think that answers the own question, and therefore the answer for me would be no. Stavros says, greeting James, Salah to Saka, not a Harland owner. Yeah, I get the temptation of that. Listen, stick in the art. I have an inkling that Palace Liverpool will be low scoring tomorrow. That's not to put people off if people want to captain Mo any game, any time, right? I get the appeal. Just consider how you feel if you make that sort of move. Saka has a quiet weekend. How are you going to feel about that on the other side if Mo does well as well? Always difficult when you sell a player like Mo. You almost want that excuse where he's like, and even though he's done well in the fixture in the past, Mo's got City away, I'll move him on. You almost want that sort of excuse. That's why we look at Palmer in 8, because Palmer goes to Liverpool, for example. You almost want that sort of excuse. Crystal Palace away doesn't really feel like that excuse, right? Just having a look to see if there's any team news. Jacob Ramsey, Leon Bailey, some of the later ones are both doubts for Aston Villa, so too Amadou and Nana. Obviously Morgan Gibbs-White back from suspension from Nottingham Forest. That's the only ones that I think are not Morgan Gibbs-White being back from suspension is not different. Unai Emery was the last press conference. I think that's the only one that's kind of wasn't covered before my stream started. Christian Norgard's available for Brentford as well. Craig Wilson, would you downgrade Porro to Van der Ven to then upgrade Vardy to Solanke for free? I mean, if you make that sort of move, I'd be quite tempted, yes. But would I, on the face of it, want to downgrade Porro to Van der Ven? My answer on that is still no. Pedro nearly scored last night, hit the post. He's still in and about it. I wouldn't want to move Pedro Porro for me personally. But I with what you're offering me there, the upgrade to have Solanke rather than Vardy, yes, I get. But I wouldn't force that through this week. I don't think. Maybe one for game week 8 more. Yeah, it feels more like a roll to me. Tristan Day says, hi James, can Foda cover Harland like he did last year, do you think? If Harland maintains his fitness, I think very importantly, I don't think anything's covering him this year. I think I reflect on last season and think, how fit was he? This looks like the player from the start of year 1 again. So I can only say really on what I'm watching at the moment, no. But you're best off not looking at it that way, right? Because reality is, it's the same as me, right? I don't have Harland. Am I sitting there going, I don't think Harland's going to be the highest scoring player? Well, I do, right? It's just about, I don't look at it and think, oh, I've got Palmer and Saka, can that cover Harland? It's more, can I take him on? Can I take him on? Can my combinations of Saka and Palmer at 20 million take on, Harland and Rodgers as an example? I've got Rodgers as well, bad example, but I think you get what I'm saying. I'm more looking at that. Can I take that sort of thing on rather than just looking at one player versus Harland? If you just look at one player versus Harland, the only person you could really foresee at the moment is Palmer or maybe even Mo Salah, right? Otherwise, it's got to be a no, really. Mihai Tataru says, hi James, last decision on wildcard, Vardio and Mavadivi, or Leif Davis and Brennan Johnson. That's the Brennan Johnson route, mate. It's going to be the preference. Good luck. Jerry W says, hello Jimbo, non-FPL question first. Who do you think wins first between Southampton, Ipswich, Leicester and Wolves? I have an inkling that Leicester might tomorrow. I'm not going to predict that, but they might. They might tomorrow, Leicester. It's not an easy game on paper against Bournemouth, obviously, but I have an inkling that they might. I also have an inkling that Wolves might get something at Brentford. I think on the fixtures that are coming up, the sensible answer is probably Leicester across the next three. I know obviously Ipswich playing Everton at home in 8, but yeah, probably Leicester, I think. That doesn't mean I think Leicester are the best of those sides. I don't. Nikolai says, hi James, loving the pod. I'm on wildcard this week. Which players' teams would you be targeting? So shoe-ins for me, I mean, if I was on wildcard this week, I would find it extremely difficult to not go with Harland. Palmer would be in. I'd certainly want bits of Arsenal. Bumo would be going in. Sepp van den Berg would be going in. I would potentially, if I was on wildcard this week, be looking at Jared Bowen. I'd definitely be looking at Tottenham. I think there's every chance I would go Porro, Johnson, Solanke if I was on wildcard. So there's enough names for you without picking your team, mate. Alex Burmister says, hi James, who would you start this week, Eze or Rodgers? Eze. By the way, Porto fan, was in the drag-out last night, gutted with that Maguire goal, bitter. Don't be, mate. It's not a terrible result despite some of their failings recently. Sean24 says, hi James, hope you're well. Do you believe Eze to Johnson is a worthwhile transfer? Johnson is obviously on fire at the moment with favourable fixtures coming up, but the early subs are off-putting. Yeah, but remember, this is also a player that I've been very consistent saying all year will also even return for you as a substitute. So yeah, look, he's a player who fitness-wise is not up to the really high level of someone like Dejan Kulusevski. I mean, it's a note as well, and James Maddison often getting benched early, whereas Kulusevski's not. But Johnson's still the one there. So yeah, look, it's fine, it's reasonable. Again, I just look at Palace's fixtures after this weekend and just consider if that's definitively right. And just take a step back and just think it's little things. Not to say it's wrong, but if you'd have had Eze versus Brennan Johnson as a debate before game week 4, what answer would you have come to? We'd have all said Eze, wouldn't we? And I realise at that point Johnson's playing Arsenal and that sort of thing. But we'd have all said Eze. Let's remember why. Perhaps. As said, third most shots in the league, Eze. To flip that, Brennan Johnson, second most penalty area touches. If it can be done for free and you're happy with your structure, yeah, now would probably be a decent time to consider making it. I certainly wouldn't do it for a hit. I just ask that you give it a little bit of second thought, that's all. Because I don't think it's kind of cut and dry to definitively say, yeah, definitely. God, there's some Brennan Johnson love today. Charlie, hi mate. Johnson or Solanke for FPL? Dom. Clear on that on Monday. Dom's still the one, mate. It says, love your stuff, mate. You've got me through a year from hell with health issues, and your content popping up always brings me joy. Charlie, DM's open for people like you, mate. Hope you're well, pal. Not for people to send me screenshots of their team and thoughts, because I don't have many. Right, we're going to cover off, because I said I've got to wrap this at 2:55. I'm going to cover off 3 more. Jerry Darmy says, FPL question 1. Do you bench Semenyo at Villa if the bench cover is better fixture, or start with how Villa defend in the league? I mean, this is what, a game week 9 question? I certainly wouldn't fear playing Semenyo at Villa. Villa kept a clean sheet in Europe and haven't looked good defensively in the league recently. I certainly wouldn't fear that sort of thing, mate. As the Hargreaves says, hi James, what do I do now with Diaz? Do I go for Palmer from -4? I know it's reactionary after just wildcarding, or do it next week, or maybe someone like Bruno. The reality is, if you don't go Diaz to Palmer this week, I don't think you're going to do it next week, are you? With Chelsea going to Liverpool? I don't know. You just wildcarded, mate. You obviously chose the decisions you made for a reason. I don't know if I'd necessarily just tear that up straight away. But I understand the desire for Cole Palmer. Again, a lot of people said on here, if we get Diaz news, well, yeah, if we get Diaz news that he's not starting, yeah, probably go in for it. Otherwise, I don't think so. Daniel Cullerton says, do you think Solanke would have been picked in the England squad if he was still at Bournemouth? How much of an effect does the top 6 team have on squad selection? So I mentioned this to some of our patrons yesterday, that it was like inevitable. Listen, if you're English and you play well for established Big 6 team, you're going in the squad. So if people think it's favouritism, it is. It's the reality, but you're also now doing it at a proven higher level, with all due respect to Bournemouth. And obviously it was brilliant last year. But I think we should also remember that it wasn't like there was no options for England, right? You've got Kane. Watkins had a phenomenal season, and I don't think anybody could say Ivan Toney didn't have an important impact at the right time for England in the summer. Now, Solanke was always clearly going to get ahead of Toney once Toney decided to go to Saudi Arabia. Also in terms of moving forward, and I think the profile of the players as well. And actually, Toney didn't have a great last 4 or 5 months for Brentford, but was very unlucky to miss out on squads before that. So I don't think we should be surprised. I said in the summer that as long as he wasn't a flop, he would find himself in the England squad very quickly. I wouldn't be surprised if we're sitting here in, 18 months' time, and people are calling for him to play over Kane. I wouldn't be surprised if that's a narrative around the next tournament at all, actually. The thing with Dom is, is he as good a goal scorer as Kane? No. Has he got the lightning attributes of Watkins? No. But he's a really good all-round forward. And what's really struck me is his game intelligence so far is really good. He was the profile forward I wanted. I'm so pleased that we got hold of him. I'm going to cover one more from JS because I think it's quite valid based on yesterday's podcast, which I've just noticed. He said, I watched Clash of Correspondence, Brighton v Spurs. There's not much was said about Mitoma. Very tempted to flip him to Brennan. You like that move or two sideways. I'd never like flipping a player to another player who's playing on the opposite team when they're about to play each other. That's got an inevitable conclusion. But if they weren't playing each other, I would probably say, yeah, I'd make that move. And there was justification to do it in any case because A, it could go in your favour. B, Brighton's fixtures afterwards, pretty tough. Newcastle away, yes, Wolves afterwards. But then Liverpool and Manchester City as well. And with Tottenham's fixtures, I think there's justification. Just understand that, Mitoma could do well on Sunday, right? Mitoma might well beat him this week. But I would say if you don't do it this week, it's a move you may well want to make next week. We also didn't speak about Heung-min Son much on that podcast yesterday. It does look highly likely that he'll be out for this weekend. Right, I'll leave it there, guys, because I've got to shoot. Thanks very much. For those whose questions I didn't get to, apologies. If you want to tag me, that's not DM, on Twitter, feel free to do so and ask a question there, and I will get back to you before the end of the day. If you want to support the show, it's www.patreon.com/planetfpl. For advanced tier patrons, your team news stream today will be at 5 o'clock. The freely available to all content next week will be Game Review podcast Monday, Clash of Correspondence Tuesday, Nottingham Forest versus Crystal Palace with Mark Southerns and Rory McLaughlin-Dowd, Clayton and James show Wednesday, where apparently I'm doing the intro. Another Clash of the Correspondence for you on Thursday is Fulham versus Aston Villa with Lewis James and Lee Jackson, and then Ask James next Friday as well. There is a high probability that it will be at an earlier time next week. We will post the full schedule either on Sunday night or on Monday morning, and you can find that via my Twitter account at Planet FPL Pod. Other than that, everyone, be nice to each other. I hope your arrows are green. Have a great weekend. Be nice to each other. And for the benefit of those on the audio cue music, please, man child.